So this is kind of a different background for our videos. We're in a gazebo overlooking Lake Superior. And it's because we've been spending a couple of nights at a Boondockers welcome site. If you're not familiar with that program, I'll put a link to it below. But basically, people offer their driveways, their property, parts of their yard, whatever works for you to stay overnight and boondock. And we're just outside of Duluth, Minnesota, and we have found a great way to cap off a week in Duluth by being here.
Yeah, it was really nice that we found this because it was Labor Day weekend. All the campgrounds were full. We really had wanted to spend a few more days in Duluth getting to do a few things that we hadn't been able to do during the week while we were working. And so the Boondockers Welcome Program has really been nice to us over the years that we've been part of the program. And so just wanted to say thank you to our host for letting us stay for for a couple days. But it really was like the perfect location for everything we wanted to do here in Duluth this weekend.
You mentioned a great place to stay. The entire week before this, we've been staying at Lakehead Boat Basin in Duluth, right in the city.
Oh, that was amazing, actually.
And essentially, it's a marina. These guys are great. They have this property there right on the canal. They have a hotel, they have a marina, and they have RV parking at the marina. It's city camping. It's not
a parking lot. Let's be real.
It's a parking lot with water and electric at your site. Some of their sites actually have a sewer hookup. We stayed on the electric and water, but it's right at the marina and it's right on the canal headed out to Lake Superior from Duluth under the aerial lift bridge. It is made for some tremendous mornings and evenings and all kinds of things to see the sights right there.
I thoroughly enjoyed staying there because I really enjoyed watching the freighters come in and out at all hours of the day. Literally.
And night.
At 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. And you know it because they do their horn salute with the bridge. And it doesn't matter what time they go through that horn blast. Don't expect a full night's sleep, but it's not, it may just wake you up for a little bit and then go back to bed. But if you want to jump out of your RV at 2 in the morning and watch the freighters go by, it's actually really cool when it's peaceful and dark and it's just this 1,000-foot freighter is going by. So I don't think we got any footage of it going through at night because I was out in my pajamas. But it was just really cool. It was a really nice spot. It was easily bikeable or walkable to a number of the attractions in, the local area. And so we really found that it was a nice place to stay if you have an RV.
It is something to keep in mind that you are across the lift bridge to get to there. So we waited for a bit when we first arrived to get to the park because the lift bridge was up and they've got to wait for those ships to get underneath. And so you may have a little bit of a wait. So if you're trying to plan something based on timing, whether you're coming or going, keep that in mind that the bridge does go up periodically to let those ships through. But, then you can, once you're parked at the RV and, the park and the marina right there, you can walk across the bridge or take your bike across. There's a sidewalk across the bridge. And then you're in an area known as Canal Park, which is a great little restaurant and entertainment district. It's just a nice spot to be.
It was a really nice locale, and we took advantage of that by, walking across the bridge and enjoying a couple of the local restaurants. There's a really nice Mexican place right there. There's a candy shop. There's a number of different, whether it's a t-shirt souvenir type place or an art gallery, antique store. My favorite was the glass blowing. You can go in there and watch them just from outside on the sidewalk, blowing the different types of glass and working with it and making all sorts of things. And then you can obviously go in and purchase things. So that was really cool. That was probably my favorite. But there's just a lot to see and do along the Canal Park area. There's a couple of, other entertainment type venues and bars, restaurants. And then right along the canal there is the Maritime Museum, and it's a free museum that you can go into to learn about the shipping industry, how Duluth came to be with the freighters and the canal and everything. And so that was really informative and just kind of a nice thing to do.
It's operated, and I think there's some offices there for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers because they're the ones that take care of that canal that's there. And you can actually walk out on either side of the canal, and being from Michigan, we're used to the Great Lakes freighters. We've seen them in Port Huron. We've seen them at, Algonac State Park. I mean, there's all different places. Sault Ste. Marie. But for whatever reason, in Duluth here, when you're standing on that canal, you are right there. And you really get a feel for how big those freighters are. They are massive.
I mean, we're talking 1,000-footers. I mean, everything from the shorter 700-foot ones to, the Queen of the Great Lakes, the Paul Tregurtha, which is 1,014 feet long. It is specifically 1,014 feet long because that's how long the Po Lock is in the Sioux, and it can't be any bigger than that.
And we got to see the Tregurtha.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting. And because if you go back and you see our Lime Island State Park video, the Tregurtha went by the island while we were there. And, the ranger we're with noted, oh, it's the Tregurtha. It's the biggest on the lakes. And then we happened to notice that it was coming out when we were in Duluth. So that was neat to be able to put those two things together. If you want to see an old freighter, it was built, I think in the 1930s. That's also available as a museum now. It's docked in Duluth. It's the William Irwin. And we paid to go on that. That was worth it. That was a nice tour. You got to take your time and really kind of get a feel for what those freighters were like. And it actually operated well into the 70s, the 1970s. So it was on the lakes for a good long time.
Well, and it seems big, but it was only 600 some feet.
Only 600
Only
feet, yeah.
600 some feet. I mean, compared to the 1,000-footers now. And one of the gentlemen that was one of the tour guides had actually worked on the sister ship. And so he said it was identical. It was just, a different ship. So he was able to explain a little bit more to us how the ship operated, what the schedules were for the crew on board. He was one of the wheelsmen, so he kind of worked a 4-hour shift, and then he rotated with 2 or 3 other people. And so we get to hear some fun stories about that. And I think of all the paid activities in Duluth that you can do, and there are a lot of them, I highly recommend going on the ship, just because that is such a core part of Duluth's history, is the freighter industry. And so I think you get a much better appreciation actually getting in and going down in the cargo hold and up in the captain's berth and just kind of seeing, what life is really like for the folks that do that year round.
Well, and what's interesting about the Irwin, too, is not just that you get to see the freighter operations and how things worked, but it was the flagship of the fleet when it was built. And they had guest cabins. And so those are pretty fancy, especially when you think back to the 1930s when it was built and the wood paneling and the way it was decorated. So it's not just thinking of a working freighter. You got to see some really cool staterooms and things that they had, too. That was kind of neat.
There's plenty to do in Duluth, both indoor and outdoor activities. One of the cool things is to go up to the Skyline Parkway, which is a road way at the top of Duluth, overlooking the town and like Superior. And it's just a really cool vantage point. One of the neat things up there is Enger Observation Tower in Enger Park. And Enger Tower is a 5-story brick tower, 360-degree views of Duluth and the surrounding area. Well worth the trip up there, especially on a gorgeous sunny day. And see all the sailboats and the freighters and the iron ore docks and just everything that makes Duluth Duluth. It's super pretty up there. And when you're, not only at the observation tower, but then there's also in the park, there's a Japanese garden that you can wander through.
Yeah, the Japanese Peace Garden isn't really very big, but it was kind of nice to just kind of, sit there and reflect a little bit and look at, and there's different times of the year when the flowers are blooming, so it might be pretty. There's a peace bell that's there, that sort of thing. There's also trails. We didn't get a chance to do those, but there are trails throughout Enger Park. So it's a pretty popular place and something to definitely check up. And just the Skyline Parkway is a really nice drive. There's some pullouts where you can kind of get out and get a really nice view of Duluth and the harbor and the canal. And so I really enjoyed that we went up there.
It's there year round. You can always stop up there and for this gorgeous view. However, right now, from September through October is raptor watching, and they are watching all of the birds migrate from Canada down to South America. And so they're up there counting birds every day for like 2 months to see them all migrate through. And we totally just stumbled upon this. We're like, what is going on? There's like people everywhere with cameras and like road signs and careful watch. And anyways, we literally had no idea what we were getting into. Pulled off, got out, and found out what they were doing. And ended up spending like a couple hours grabbing with our binoculars, watching all the birds fly by. I mean, it was actually quite impressive.
That was completely unexpected, but totally worth the drive up there and then spending the time there and learning from the naturalists who were there and the information. And apparently it's because it is a huge migratory route. So it's all kinds of different hawks. We saw bald eagles there, turkey, vultures, just all kinds of different birds. And they all come through that area. And then they actually have lures out where they try to bring some of the birds in, and they will capture them to measure them, weigh them, band them so they can be cataloged if they ever catch them again, that kind of thing. And so a couple were caught while we were there and we got to see it. It was just a really neat experience to see that. And it's because of apparently the way the geography is and the geology. They can't fly over the lake for their long migration south. And the way the rocks are there, they heat up from the sun and it creates thermals for the birds to use. So it makes this perfect corridor for migration. And it's something we'd never heard of. But the one naturalist was there said there's a gentleman from Japan who comes out like 2 weeks every year. That's his vacation. He comes over from Japan to Duluth, Minnesota, just to watch all these birds migrating through. It's pretty amazing.
And I can see why, because you get such a vast variety of birds coming through. Like you said, we saw some standard ones, a couple red-tailed hawks, the bald eagles, the cute little ones that I can't remember their name now, the shorties.
They call them shorties.
But I can't remember what they are, but they're like, flap, 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 glide, flap, 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 glide. Like that's their telltale sign is they glide much different than the other birds coming through. And they were up to 300 of them that they had counted yesterday coming through. So it's just, the birds will migrate over the next couple months sort of in chunks depending on their breed. But anyway, we could have stayed there forever, but we had other things to do yesterday. But that was just really cool. And only this time of year are you going to see that particularly. But like I said, the drive, the pullouts are there all year round.
As you're on Skyline Parkway, you can come down what's known as Seven Bridges Road. And it is because there are literally 7 stone bridges. They started out as wooden bridges years ago, and then they've been replaced over time. But they're stone bridges now, really pretty bridges. The road goes along Amity Creek. And that's a real nice drive as well. It's kind of peaceful in there. It is 1-lane bridges, so take your time going through there.
They're not kidding.
Especially if you have a larger rig. But you could do it. I mean, in any kind of rig, I think you could do it. And then you'll end up coming right down into Duluth. And then there's stuff all along the shore in Duluth that you can do as well.
There's a number of different beaches and parks and attractions to see along, sort of the shoreline there. One of the big ones is Brighton Beach, and we'd heard all about it. Unfortunately, it was closed, and so we didn't get to go there. So we ended up detouring over to the Glensheen Mansion, which is huge. I don't know. It's like 39 rooms or something.
39 rooms. No.
We chose not to spend the $40 to tour the mansion, but instead you can pay $5 a person to just tour the grounds. And so we ended up doing that. And I think that was well worth it because it's super pretty. They've got a huge flower garden and vegetable garden. There's an old stone bridge that you can go over, the carriage house, the boat house. And then you can still kind of walk around the mansion itself. And so I think it was just really cool. That was worth it. They've got some chairs set up along the beach so you can just go out and enjoy some views of Lake Superior. But it's got a pretty storied history behind it. So it is kind of worth checking out if you want to go Google it. But it was just another activity along the shore to do.
It's a beautiful home. It is a huge mansion. And if you had the time and wanted to spend the money to go in it, it is essentially preserved. I mean, the way it has always been. And it was actually the Congdon family, I believe. And the patriarch of the family made his fortune in the iron ore industry up here. And this was his way. It was his opulent way of showing off his money is how they described it. And they clearly spent some money on this place. But that was really neat. And then you can keep driving down more in towards the city and you hit Leif Erickson Park. And there's the Duluth Rose Garden is there. So that's also a nice area. And that's all free. And you can just kind of wander in there, see Lake Superior, check out the roses in the different parts of the park. It's a really nice town.
There's just a ton to do in Duluth, really. We've really enjoyed it. Probably the highlight, or one of the highlights of our trip, was a sunset dinner cruise with Vista Fleet. And it was a nice evening out on the Vista Queen. And you got a really nice prepared dinner. And then you could just hang out on the top deck of the boat and, watch the city of Duluth go by. So we went through not only the harbor, but actually out onto Lake Superior. We went out the Superior end, the Superior, Wisconsin channel, and then down Lake Superior and came back in under the aerial lift bridge. So that was like totally capped out our entire week of Duluth. We watched the aerial lift bridge and the ships going in and out all week long. And so to end our trip by going under the bridge ourselves was just sort of like the cherry on top. It was just really cool, especially at night when you get to see the whole city and the bridge lit up. And I think that was probably one of our favorite activities of the week. And they do these cruises. It's not just the dinner cruise, but they also do sightseeing cruises during the day that are narrated, and you learn the history of the harbor and the iron ore. So those are highly recommended as well. We just wanted to do something a little bit fancier, but they also do cruises, fall colored cruises. They do brunch cruises. There's all sorts of things. So I actually think after doing that, that was worth the money to get out in the harbor and see Duluth from a different perspective.
There's a ton of stuff to do. There's the Great Lakes Aquarium that we didn't do. There's a railroad museum. You can actually take train rides up and down the North Shore. And Duluth is sort of the base of the North Shore, which we've done on its own. And then we knew we'd be coming back to Duluth on our way to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So we kind of capped off Minnesota here in Duluth. But I would think no matter what time of year, although in the winter, be prepared for cold, there's going to be stuff for you to do here in Duluth. And yeah, I would come back here again.
There's just so much because it's outdoor activities. So even you can do stand-up paddleboarding or kayaking and take some of the excursions. But I definitely think that Duluth should be on your list of places to visit.
Put Duluth on your list. Get to it if you can. Go somewhere. Find a place. Go out and explore it. Keep on trekking.
And we'll see you out there.